Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our webinar today. On behalf of MCNC, I'd like to thank you for joining. My name is Chris Beal, and I'm the Chief Information Security Officer at MCNC. And among other things, I am responsible for service development for new security services that MCNC offers to its customers. So the newest entry to our service catalog for security services is our DNS Security Filtering Service, and so that's what we want to spend some time talking about today. Just a couple of logistics. This webinar today is being conducted via Zoom, so hopefully everyone was able to get logged in without issue. We are planning to have some time at the end for questions and answers. If you do have questions that you would like to ask, the way to do that is to type them into the chat window. So at the bottom of your desktop sharing screen there's an icon that says chat. You can click on that icon and that will bring up the chat pane to your right. And you can use that to enter your question, and it will get relayed to us, and we'll make sure that we do our best to get it answered for you. So just by way of agenda, what we plan to talk about today is we'll spend a couple of minutes kind of recapping how MCNC went through its process of getting to where we are today with the DNS Security Filtering Service. And then we will have an overview of the service, talk about what it is and how it works, and the components of the service. And then we will have some time for a live demonstration where we'll show you the console for the service and let you see what it looks like and how it works and how you configure the service and make use of it. And then we will have time at the end for questions and answers. So just in kind of looking back a little bit at how we got here, if we rewind the calendar back to summer of 2017, so a little bit less than a year ago, some of MCNC's customers came to us and asked us if this type of DNS filtering service is something that MCNC could investigate and determine if it was something that we could provide to our customers. So we undertook an effort to do an evaluation. We looked at the marketplace, looked at who were some of the biggest vendors in this particular space, and we also looked at the viability of building this kind of service ourselves. And in that evaluation process, as you should with really any good evaluation process, we developed a set of requirements that the service must meet. And in this particular evaluation, I think we had almost 40 different requirements that we were looking at. And we used those requirements to generate a weighted scorecard. And then we used the weighted scorecard to evaluate 3 different vendors that we were looking at in this space. And as a result of that process, the weighted scorecard process, we came out with a standard view of how well each vendor scored against the set of requirements that we had defined for the service. And then we undertook some discussions with each of the vendors around contracts and pricing and what a partnership arrangement might look like with each particular vendor. And we used that information to factor into our decision-making process as well. So at the end of all of that, what we determined was that MCNC felt like Akamai was the best solution for us, and it offered the best value for our customers. And so that's why we have chosen to partner with Akamai on this solution. MCNC's service is powered by Akamai's Enterprise Threat Protector platform. So if you want additional technical information beyond what we cover today, or you want to do your own research, you can look for information on Akamai's Enterprise Threat Protector, and that's the underpinnings of MCNC's DNS Security Filtering Service. So again, thank you all for joining the call today. And at this point, I am going to hand the baton over to our colleagues from Akamai who are on the call with us, and they're going to lead us through the overview of the service. So Ram, I'm passing it over to you.
Thanks, Chris. Are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ram Cholan. I'm a solutions engineer with Akamai. I work with state, local, and higher education institutions, and I support MCNC. So as Chris mentioned, we'll walk you through a quick introduction of Akamai, and then we'll jump straight into our DNS Security Filtering Service. We'll walk you through a high-level overview, and then give you a demo of the user interface. Towards the end, we can cover any questions that you have. And if you have any questions, please type in the chat window. So Akamai has been in business for the last 20 years. It actually came out of MIT. It was founded by a math professor who's currently our CEO. And essentially what we do is we make the internet fast, reliable, and secure. And we have some of the key stats there. We have over 6,000 customers who we serve today. And if you look at our customer base, we have across the board. We have government agencies, e-commerce companies, financial institutions, you name it. We have about, from the top 500 global companies, about a third of them are Akamai customers. In terms of services that we offer using our platform, it falls under like key three categories. In terms of web performance, we help make websites and web applications perform faster over the internet. With cloud security, we protect web applications from DDoS attacks and application layer attacks. In the DNS front, we offer authoritative and recursive DNS services. And with media delivery, we offer both live and on-demand video streaming over the internet. And for all these services, we have a team of professional services folks who are available to help with configuration, maintenance, and ongoing support of all of our services. So that's the introduction. Now I'll give you a high-level overview of our DNS Security Filtering Service, which is Enterprise Threat Protector. And as Chris mentioned, we worked with MCNC during the evaluation process, and we are very excited to offer this service to MCNC's customer base. And we all know that when it comes to malware and targeted threats, the volume, prevalence, and sophistication of these threats have been rising. And for organizations to protect against these type of targeted threats, we've launched this solution, which is DNS based, and it can help block these targeted threats at the DNS layer. And at a high level, it adds security, control, and visibility to your organization. So if you look at DNS, right, so it's almost everything that happens on the internet starts with a DNS query that translates a domain name to an IP address. The DNS protocol inherently, it's open and unfiltered. It has no intelligence to distinguish between a safe domain or a malicious domain. If you send a request, it's going to resolve any domain. So what we've done is, on top of this recursive DNS layer, we've built a cloud security intelligence, which can identify a safe domain from a malicious domain. And we've also enabled the customers to access the service through a cloud-based management portal. So this is where you'll set up the configuration and look at reviews and dashboards. I'll walk you through the demo of the management portal after the overview. And from your standpoint, you'll have to point your outgoing DNS queries to Akamai's DNS servers, and every customer will get assigned 2 unique IP addresses. So every request comes to Akamai. We look at the query to see if it's going to a malicious domain out of the internet. It could be going to a ransomware site. It could be going to a command and control server, phishing, malware, all these kind of threats or domains that are hosting these threats. We can look at the DNS layer and essentially stop the request from resolving and stop the user from accessing the malicious domain. That's the high level. And if you look at malwares and the threat actors who are out there who are essentially spreading these malicious threats, they use DNS at some stage of the kill chain to spread these threats. They want to stay anonymous in order to evade from like law enforcement. They hide behind proxies. They use DNS. They use a variety of different techniques to spin up different, like multiple domains in a matter of minutes. So when it comes to where the solution will come into play, the first phase is during the delivery phase, it can help. An example would be one of the users in your network gets a phishing email, clicks on a link without inspecting it, or just out of curiosity, they click on the link. So without the service, the request would resolve, and there's a risk of the user accessing the phishing link and maybe compromising their username and password credentials. With this service, when the DNS lookup happens, we can identify that the request is going to a phishing domain, and we can block the request and the user from accessing it. Another example would be one of your users going to a website, and if the website has a malicious link that's hosted on the web page, it may download on the user's endpoint, and there's a risk of the malware spreading in your network. So that's the delivery phase where our enterprise threat protector can help. Then, if the malware gets installed, let's say in an endpoint, one of the first things the malware would do is reach out to an external command and control server. So the malware would reach out in order to get updates from the external controlling party to update the malware software and essentially wait for what action to take. This also looks at DNS requests, and looking at the DNS, we can block the command and control activity from happening. And finally, we see another threat vector where the hackers are using DNS for data exfiltration. A large number of organizations do not inspect and monitor their DNS traffic, so the bad actors are leveraging that, where they essentially inject the data that they want to steal into the DNS payload and exfiltrate that data. Using the service, we can identify the data exfiltration using DNS, and we can block that. The value that Akamai brings to this service is our cloud security intelligence. So Akamai has unique visibility into enterprise and consumer web and DNS traffic. On our CDN platform, we carry a vast amount of daily web traffic, up to about 30%. So using this data, we can identify billions of IP addresses connecting to web applications served by Akamai. We can identify where the bad actors are and what malicious activity that they're doing. And with this service, we currently process about 150 billion DNS queries every day. That also gives us intelligence to identify the domains on the internet, which ones are malicious and which ones are safe. In addition to our own information, we buy raw threat data and external threat intelligence from Akamai's partners. We use that information to augment our information and to improve the accuracy of our threat intelligence. And finally, we use publicly available information such as who is data and registrar data for the domains. So an example would be if we see that a specific domain has been registered just an hour ago, the risk profile of that domain is higher than a domain that's been registered for 10 years. So we use all these multiple factors to identify the malicious domains. And we have a dedicated threat research team which parses this vast amount of threat intelligence in order to make it actionable for our customers. Some of you may already have endpoint protection to protect against malware. You may be using a next generation firewall. Adding the Enterprise Threat Protector service in addition to your existing defenses will add another layer of protection. So with this, you improve your security posture. It's essentially a defense in depth strategy. So you are better protected with protection at the DNS layer. So just to summarize what the service offers, high level, it's security. It doesn't have any hardware or software to implement. Everything's cloud-based. It's in under 30 minutes, you can have it up and running. It's one of the appealing factors for our customers is the simplicity of use and how effective it is. You quickly add a layer of security for your organization to protect against malware, phishing, command and control, and DNS-based data exfiltration. The second component is control. We have an optional acceptable use policy where we have 16 categories. It's an optional feature. If you want to enforce the acceptable use policy, you can leverage the service for that. And finally, visibility. One of the problems with DNS is the vast amount of data that it generates. If you look at a small organization with 100 users, the amount of DNS queries would be in the order of millions every day. That makes it challenging to identify abnormal DNS activity happening in the network. With this service, we can identify all the malicious activity that's happening in your network from a DNS standpoint, and you get visibility into essentially what sites your users are accessing and lets you control that component. That's the overview portion. Now I'll switch to the demo of the user interface. Chris, are you able to see my browser that I'm sharing now?
No, I still see the presentation.
Okay. Is it possible to make me the host again so
Yes.
I can share my screen?
Yeah, we'll do that. Okay, you should be the host now, Ram.
Yeah, thank you. So are you able to see the screen now?
Yes, I can see it now.
Okay, perfect. So I'll walk you through a demo of the user interface on the different steps involved with first configuring the service, and then from a reports and monitoring standpoint, what are the different capabilities that we offer. All of our customers will get access to the portal, which we call Luna Control Center. You can access it by going to control.akamai.com. Once you're logged in, you can set up access to your IT team that will be managing the services. We have multiple levels of privilege that you can configure. Once that's set up, the first part of it is configuring and activating the service. I'll walk you through the steps. The first one is configuring a location where you configure your public IPs that the request will come to us from. So you may have a couple of different campuses. In that case, you can set up a different location for each campus and the associated IP address. You can configure it with CIDR blocks with subnets or just specific IPs. And you can assign different policies based on these different locations. The next step is configuring the security policy. I'm using a demo account for this. And here, essentially, what we have is we have 3 built-in Akamai security lists, which is malware, phishing, command and control. For each of these categories, we have 2 different types. One is high-risk domains. So these are domains which are dedicated to host malicious content, and that's essentially their sole business. The second type are suspected domains, and this could be compromised domains. It may change frequently. So you have an option to have different actions for these different types. And you can take different actions. You could block the user and display a splash page to the user saying, we've identified that you're going to a malicious site, and that's the reason the request has been blocked. You could just monitor and log it and allow the DNS request to process. Or if you choose not to display a splash page, you could just essentially deny the DNS query, and the DNS query will time out, and the user will see a browser-specific error message. So these are all the different options. So I'll cover sinkhole in a few minutes when we get to that section, and how you can leverage that action. You can opt to enable or disable alerts. So every time a user request hits one of these categories, we can send out email alerts. In addition to the security list that we have built in, if you want to enable a custom security list, you can certainly do that. You can add your own list with domains and IP addresses, and choose to block them if you prefer. And we have the optional acceptable use policy. We have about 16 different categories. If you choose to enforce acceptable use policy at the DNS layer, you can block it here. And finally, two other features. We have something called Safe Search, which a lot of school districts leverage. If you want to enable only child-safe results to be replied from Google and Bing, you can enable this feature. We also have it for YouTube, where using this feature, you could restrict users from accessing videos that have mature content or language. We have CDN optimization. We use IP Anycast network for this. Currently, we have about 55 points of presence around the world. So when your request goes out to Akamai DNS server, it will connect to the closest Akamai POP. So essentially guaranteeing fast performance with reduced latency. And you have two options here, which is list and quick list. Here's where this is essentially the custom list that you can configure. You can set up whitelist domains and IP addresses if you want to restrict your users from accessing it. And if you want to whitelist them, you can certainly do it. And it's pretty similar for list and quick list. The only difference is quick list propagates a lot faster. So in a matter of seconds, it'll get propagated, whereas list has a higher quota. You can have about 200,000 entries in the list, and it'll take a few minutes to update. I'll walk you through the different functions we have under the utility section. The first one is client connector. What this offers is off-network protection. If you want to offer this DNS protection for your users when they are not connected to your network, let's say they are working remotely, working from home, you have an option to download the clients we currently have for Windows and Mac and install it in the endpoint. So even though when your users are working remotely, all the DNS queries will get proxied to the Akamai DNS servers and have protection. We know that a lot of students in school districts use Chromebook. We have that function in our roadmap. By the end of this year, we'll also have a Chromebook client. These are the error pages or splash pages that your end users will see when they access one of these sites that's malicious. You have an option to customize it. You can change the look and feel of it with your logo, your title, and you can customize it if you want to mention any IT help desk email or phone number for the end user to contact. And we have different for splash pages for different categories such as acceptable use policies, malware, etc. Communication is a tab where you can set up alerts for your IT team. If there's any system events, we can notify your IT team. Scheduled reports is you can choose to enable daily or weekly reports to be emailed to you. So essentially, it will be a summary of everything that happens in your network from a DNS standpoint, and it will be emailed to you either daily or weekly based on the configuration you have here. Finally, security connector. Essentially, due to this architecture, by default, we'll only see your public IPs sending the request to us. If you want to have granular visibility into which endpoint is sending the request, let's say you see phishing requests come from. If you want to identify which endpoint is sending the phishing link in order to take remediation action, we have an option called Security Connector, which is essentially a sinkhole mission. We currently have for VMware. You could download the virtual machine image from our portal, install it in your network. So the way it works is when users go to the malicious site, we redirect the user to the virtual machine. So the virtual machine will collect all the user's data, such as private IP address, what port it's trying to connect, etc. It will drop the request, collect all the information, and feed it back to our portal. So you can have it all the visibility that you need from the portal. If you currently use your own sinkhole, you can even use that instead of using our virtual machine. So once you configure the utilities, you have to click on deploy, which pushes the configuration to the Akamai platform. And every account will have 2 IP addresses. You'll see it here on the top right-hand side, which you need to forward your outgoing DNS queries to. We have IPv4 and IPv6 as well. And these IPs are unique for every customer account. And the typical motion after you click on deploy is to just test with your computer, maybe do an NS lookup or dig for a specific website pointing towards the Akamai DNS servers, make sure it resolves fine. And then at your convenience, you could forward your production DNS traffic to these 2 DNS servers. So that's essentially completes the installation. And on your end, if you're using a Windows Active Directory or domain controller, you would configure it under the resolvers tab. Typically, a lot of customers use either the ISP or Google's 8888 server. You would replace those entries with the Akamai DNS servers. And that's pretty much it. Now, let me walk you through the reporting and monitoring functioning that we have. If you click on dashboard, it will essentially display everything that's happening in your network. You can go back 24 hours and all the way up to the last 30 days. It will show you the total number of threat events that's happened in your network, total number of acceptable use policy events, the total DNS activities, and the number of alerts that's triggered. And when it comes to categories, we have a breakdown on malware, command and control, and phishing, which location the requests came from, and what are the top domains that your users are accessing. If you click on command and control, you can find more information on that. So you can see which domain the users access, what day and time the request came from, what's the frequency of it, what action was taken, pretty much all these granular details. What IP it resolved. And if you click on IOC details, what this provides is what Akamai's threat intelligence database has on that specific domain. So here you can see when we started tracking this as a malicious site, who it's registered to, and in certain cases, you will see what kind of malware it is. A few weeks ago, I was seeing some of my customers' information. We saw a lot of like crypto mining and cryptocurrency malicious activity where hackers were leveraging endpoints to mine cryptocurrency. We saw like Panda bots, like some of the bot activity. So you can find what kind of malware it is, what's the category, what name servers, when it was last changed, and the different malicious URLs that's hosted on that domain. And you can access the indicator search from here. You can essentially type in any domain here to see what Akamai has in their threat intel database for that specific domain. Acceptable use policy events will show what categories your users are accessing, so you can drill down and find granular information. And you can click on events. Here you have an option of the same thing going back up to 30 days, and you can download all this in a CSV format. You can export it, and you can see all the different domains, the top domains that were accessed, what action was taken, and just find more granular information on it. And this shows the acceptable use policy events. And finally, with activity, you'll see the total number of DNS queries that's processed from your network. What are the top AUP categories, top geos, top domains, and which locations the requests are coming from. And as I mentioned, you can export all this information in CSV format. Security connector is the sinkhole capability. This is where it enables you to identify which endpoint in your network is sending these requests. And as you can see here, it shows the private IP address. So that's the high-level overview. Some of the frequently asked questions that comes from customers is, once you install the solution, how do you prevent your users from bypassing the solution? So as a best practice, what we recommend is once you have this solution installed, essentially whitelist only the Akamai DNS server IPs and blacklist all of the DNS queries. So that way your users cannot bypass and use some other DNS server and bypass the service. That's a recommendation for best practice. And in terms of the pricing model for it, you don't have to purchase a license for students. It's priced based only on full-time faculty, full-time employees, or FTE. So if you have any questions, feel free to type in the chat window. We can address that. So Chris, I'll turn it back to you.
Okay. Thank you, Ram. Appreciate that. So I think, Ram, at this point, since you had the host, that any questions that may have come in to chat probably have come into your window. So if you want to check there and see if we have any questions from any folks.
Okay, so I see a question which came in. Our pricing for FTE is on a monthly basis.
Yeah, so from MCNC's perspective, the way the pricing works is that, as Ram mentioned, you are only paying for full-time employees. So however many full-time employees you have in your organization, that's what you would tell us. And we would give you what your annual charge would be for the service. And we're happy to give you quotes. Some providers will publish per user prices or tiers. And as we were building the pricing model for this, we looked at a lot of options. But the challenge with doing tiers is that if you're on the low end of the tier, you're paying more per user than you should. And if you're at the high end of the tier, you're paying less than you should. And so trying to find that balance is difficult. So rather than construct tiers, we just decided to price based on what it actually costs. So again, for those who may not be aware, MCNC is a not-for-profit organization. So we do not have to generate profit off of a service like this. We only have to cover our costs. So in order to make sure that the pricing was the most fair to all of our end users, that's why we chose to do it that way. So if you're interested in pricing, the best thing to do is to contact security services at mcnc.org or contact me directly, Chris Beal, and we can get you a price for what it would cost to cover your organization.
So Chris, one of the questions which is on the window is if the service can coexist with ZSCALAR. Would you like to take that?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. So we know that many of the folks on the webinar today and that a lot of our customers are in our K-12 group of users. And many of those users do use the ZSCALAR web content security solution that MCNC provides. So absolutely, these two services can coexist. And we have a number of folks that have been evaluating the DNS service in conjunction with the ZSCALAR service. So if folks that are familiar with a strong security model are familiar with the term defense in depth, this is a great way to help achieve defense in depth. Defense in depth is a concept that says you will have multiple overlapping security layers so that if any one particular control fails at any one particular point, there's another control behind it to back it up. And this is a perfect example of a defense in depth scenario where you would have the DNS security layer overlapping your web security layer. So one of the very nice things about a DNS filtering solution is that it's really simple to deploy. There's no hardware or software to put on your end. As you've seen through the demo here, this is the kind of service that you can have up and running in 15 to 30 minutes, covering your entire network space. So that makes it an excellent additional control to add in for protection. Now, there are some caveats that go along with that. One that we've run into in our evaluations has to do with reporting. So if you're using ZSCALAR to do reports on where your users are trying to go, as an example, if you're blocking pornography sites and you want to track which users are trying to access those sites and you're doing that in ZSCALAR, then you will not want to turn that block on inside of the DNS service, because if it gets blocked at the DNS layer, you will no longer see it in your ZSCALAR reporting. So there are some caveats like that we would want to go over with you if you're interested in using it along with ZSCALAR, but absolutely it coexists, and it's a great additional solution to add in for protection. Hey, Ron.
Thanks, Chris. Yeah, there are a few other good questions. Okay,
before you move on to that, can you put up the slide, the ending slide that has the contact info on it, just so folks can know where how to reach out to us after the fact?
Yeah. So can you see the PowerPoint now?
No. You may have to stop and restart the sharing because it looks like the browser screen's in the process of minimizing.
Okay.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, we can see it there now. So yeah, you can see
Okay,
the
great.
security services email address there if you can send questions to. So you had some other questions in the chat window, Ron?
Yes. So we have a couple of other questions. Is it possible to use this service at the MCNC level for all customers, or only at individual organization level?
Yeah, so it's the way we have constructed it is it's available to individual organizations to use, because every individual organization has their own portal where they only see their data, and you get your own unique IP addresses assigned by Akamai. So you use it at the individual organizational level.
Right. And this service is currently not implemented at the overall MCNC level.
That is correct. Yes, if you're a network customer with MCNC, you get access to MCNC's DNS resolvers as part of your standard network connectivity. Those provide basic resolution, do not provide any security filtering. If you would like to take advantage of the security filtering, you can move into this filtering service that we're giving an overview of today. And you would do that by, instead of pointing to MCNC's resolvers, you would point to your Akamai resolvers.
Okay. Next one is, can Akamai IPs be proxied by an internal DNS server? Will it affect the splash page functionality? The answer is you can use your internal DNS server and proxy all the requests through that one server. The splash page functionality will work fine. And another one, so do you block all new domains by default, all like newly created domains by default? We don't do that. We use a variety of different factors to identify a malicious domain. And as we spoke earlier, we use our threat intel database, and we have a threat research team that parses all this information to identify the malicious domain. So our value add is high levels of accuracy with minimal false positives. And when we did the testing, and that's the feedback we get from our customers as well. So in terms of accuracy, that's one of our strengths.
Yeah, and I'll just say from MCNC's perspective, as we were evaluating vendors in this space, we did note that there are some vendors who by default will just block any newly created domain or any domain that's been created in the last X hours or X days until they verify that domain is good. So we know that is an approach, and we actually saw in our testing a lot of things with those vendors that were getting flagged as blocked, but were subsequently determined to not be malicious. And we did not see that with Akamai's approach. We felt like it was, as Ram said, that their approach is gives you less false positives, and we found that to be true during our testing.
Next question is, will this conflict with existing firewall settings? So this will not conflict with, if you have, let's say, a next generation firewall, for example, a Cisco firewall or Fortinet or Palo Alto, it will work perfectly fine with that. With the traffic flow, since DNS is at the beginning of the transaction, if a malicious site is classified by us, we will block it at the DNS layer. Whereas if we don't block it, then the request will go run through your firewall stack. So it can perfectly work in conjunction with each other, and essentially it adds defense in depth. See a question. any plan on giving organizations an ability to raise a score on new domains? These are often malicious. It would be good for us to have some idea of what you're doing with new domains. So we do have an option. I'm not sure if this directly answers the question. If you identify a malicious domain that's currently not flagged by our threat intel database, you have an option to report that to us. So our support team parses that information, they analyze the domain, and if they find it to be malicious, we'll add it to our database.
It's a lot easier if I can go on a cell phone.
So I think that's all the questions we have so far, Chris.
Okay. Well, we do have a few more minutes on the call, so if you do have other questions that you would like answered today, please go ahead and enter those into the chat window. If your question didn't get answered or you would like to have a further conversation, please do reach out to the security services at mcnc.org email address, and we will do our very best to get an answer for you. We are offering no obligation evaluations of this service, so any customers or folks that are in our user community who would like to evaluate the service, we absolutely can set that up for you, and that is evaluation is not limited in any way. It gives you full access to everything to try it out and make sure that it works for you. And then we can supplement that with the pricing information, and you can decide whether or not it's something that you think would be valuable and advantageous to you. So I'll pause one more time, see if we had any other questions come in, Ron.
Yeah, we have two more questions.
Okay, great.
Around ZSCALAR. The question is, what is MCNC's guidance for implementing this service along with ZSCALAR's web filtering? There seems to be a fair amount of overlap in functionality.
So our general guidance, I think where you would find most of the overlap is probably in the acceptable use policy categories. Both services are designed to filter malicious content, so there is overlap there as well, but my perspective on that as long as something is not performance impacting, that having multiple layers that are going after the same job of trying to filter out bad things is good, because there's a lot of malicious content, and the more folks you have trying to work on filtering that, generally the better off you will be from a protection standpoint. And this type of solution should not implement or cause any additional performance overhead with having this running in conjunction with ZSCALAR. So from the malware and malicious content filtering, they're very complementary. On the acceptable use side, I think our general guidance would be, for the most part, probably do not enable the blocking in the DNS filtering. Let the ZSCALAR solution do that for you, because you'll get better visibility there, and you'll have all the data in one spot. There are a couple of use cases that are kind of corner cases, I would call them, where it may make sense to turn on category blocking in the DNS filtering. And if you're encountering that, or if you're a ZSCALAR customer who wants to trial it or intends to use the DNS filtering, we'd be happy to walk through those kind of corner cases for you. But in general, other than that, I don't know that we have any other best practice developed at this point. I will say that as we are going through customer evaluations that are making use of both solutions, we're learning a lot about things that are good to do and not to do, and we're making notes on those. So we're developing kind of a best practices list as we go along. There are some things that if you do use the DNS, you need to bypass through ZSCALAR, so that traffic doesn't go through the proxy, to ensure that all the communication is working appropriately. But we have all those details captured, and we'll be happy to go through them with you if you're looking to deploy the solution. So hopefully that answers the question. And if it doesn't, please follow up with an email and we can have a further, more detailed conversation.
There's a question about this webinar can be downloaded. Is there a link for it? Yes,
I was just reminded here that I needed to make mention of the fact that this presentation today has been recorded. So we will make the recording available on the MCNC website, and you'll be able to download it and watch it again or show it to others who weren't able to attend today.
I have a question on can different security policies be configured for users who are using the off-network protection versus users who are connected on-network? The answer is yes. You can have different policies based on for your on-network users and your off-network users. Yeah, I think that's about it so far, Chris.
Okay. Well, again, thank you all for attending today. Hopefully this was useful and informative for you. And if it seems like something you're interested in knowing more about, we would certainly like to hear from you. So please reach out at the securityservices@mcnc.org email address or contact me directly, Chris Beal, chris.beal@mcnc.org. And we would love to talk to you more about it. And again, thanks everyone for your time today. We appreciate you attending.
Thank you all.